Mike Harbour, another great episode of the Lead Up Podcast. Really excited today. My first time ever doing a live podcast interview with my guest today, Scott Street. I'm excited to visit with Scott about leadership today. We're just going to talk about all things leadership. Scott's the CEO of a company called Pediatrics Plus. He's been here a couple of years. We're going to talk about leadership at Peds Plus. What is Peds Plus University? Talk about culture. And Scott and I have been friends for, Scott, almost 20 years now. I hate to admit that. It's been a long time. And we've talked about leadership a lot. And he's got a great philosophy of leadership. Scott, welcome to Lead Up Podcast.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
Yeah, really excited. Hey, tell us a little bit about your history of leadership and a little bit about Peds Plus.
So I guess in my career, 35 years in healthcare. And I've been with Pediatrics Plus now about 2.5 years, and thoroughly enjoyed joining Pediatrics Plus about 2.5 years ago. And as far as leadership, I think I've been involved in leadership my whole career, and it's been fun. It's been a challenge. That's something that I know you and I have in common. We like challenging ourselves in different ways, and since we've known each other, we kind of know each other's challenges that we've had. So be happy to talk more about that.
Yeah, so that's where I want to go next. Leadership is really hard. It's probably one of the most challenging things that people have to do, because guess what? We're dealing with people, right? And working with people that think differently, their personalities are different than ours, can make it really challenging. But how do you go about defining leadership? And then maybe what are some of the defining moments for you that have really created that definition of leadership for yourself?
If we were having this conversation, say when we first met, Mike, 20 years ago, it'd be interesting to hear the answers I would have given then versus now. And better than anybody that, the journey, life is a journey, and life's about the journey, not really the destination. For me to define leadership, goodness, I guess probably what I would say today in defining leadership, it's about influence. It's influencing people. And that can be good and that can be bad. And I can say honestly that I have failed probably more times than I've succeeded in leading groups or people. But through those failures, you learn. And so whether we live a long life or not, at some point in my opinion, you never stop being a student. And I guess that's what the goal I have for myself is really to never stop being a student when it comes to leadership.
So let's just go back, because I love that. As you know, I'm a student of leadership. I've known Scott for almost 20 years now. He probably gets tired of all the books I give him, because I'm constantly reading a book. Hey, you need to read this. Hey, I'll send him an article. You need to read this. So constantly being a student of leadership. When did you make that transition from feeling like you had to know everything about leadership to realizing that it's really a process of growth, like not being a born leader, but growing into leadership?
I don't know that there was a set time for me. I do know that early in really anyone's career, but I'll speak for myself in my career, early on, you're climbing the ladder, and unfortunately a lot of it's about yourself, and that's probably what I would tell. I know I've told my kids that a lot, is to learn early. Don't learn so late like I did in life. It's not about yourself. It's about the lifting up of others, and that's easy to say. That is challenging to do when you are, providing for your family and you're very career minded and driven. But to bring a balance to reaching goals and objectives, but also, the phase I'm in today, and I hope I end my career it's not about me, it's about others and what I can do to help lift them up around me. Big believer in, also early on, probably was more intimidated by encircling myself with people smarter and better than myself, but today I'm very comfortable with that. I do want smarter people around me. That's not hard to do from my standpoint, but it is about encircling yourself with smarter people and really helping them succeed.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I have my own personal definition of leadership. Is when I was given a leadership position, I wasn't given a crown. I was given the responsibility to bring out the best in others. And it took me a while, like you just described, it took me a while to really get there. Because I used to think, man, leadership is about me. It's about my goals. Like, they're team goals, right? But it's really about Mike Harbour goals. And I gotta score here. We gotta win here. And so it really was about me. And I was doing some training just this morning with your team here at Pete's Plus. You know, I kind of asked the question, how many of us are selfish? And the reality is, we're all selfish. Like, we all have our own agendas. We all have our own goals that we want to create. But if we truly want to lead people well, we have to set that personal agenda aside. Not that it's not important. We don't throw it away, but we set it aside and say, okay, how can I make this about them? What do I need to do to inspire them? So what are some things you do to, one, you talked about self-awareness, I know, but beyond self-awareness, what are some things you work hard to do to make sure you set your own agenda aside and really influence those that help drive the success of the company?
So I think one big thing that you already alluded to is, and you made me just think of it sitting here, is what we've got behind us. We created Pediatrics Plus University just within the last 8 months or so, and the whole platform within Pediatrics Plus and our company is to have a platform of leadership growth. And you know, I turned to you because you and I knew each other. You've worked for me for a number of years with leadership development, and you and I, your style fits my style, and because I don't want to hold back from leaders we're trying to grow into being better leaders, hold back the fact that it's tough. It's hard, you know, whether it be healthcare or in any other form of business, it is hard. Because, like you said, when dealing with people, this platform and with us inviting you to be a part of Pediatrics Plus University, I think is going to help our company as we grow, is strengthen our leaders, the ones we have today and the ones we'll have tomorrow.
Yeah, so let's talk about culture. And you know, Scott, you and I have worked together in a lot of different organizations over the last 20 years. Just talk about, and we don't want to name any specifically, but like the different cultures that were there versus where you felt like they needed to go, and how important is that culture to the success, the overall success of the organization?
You know, that's huge. One can argue, and I think a lot of really great authors have talked about culture. You know, is the main emphasis of any company that's been very successful. I would agree with that. You know, there's a balance of a lot of things that go on at once, but culture is one solid pillar for all companies that are successful. For us, you know, I'll give total credit to our owners who started the company in 2002 and did a phenomenal job in creating a culture then, and to be able to sustain a culture. It's one thing to create it, it's another thing to sustain it, and they did a phenomenal job sustaining the culture. So me being able to join PEDS is very, I didn't have to come in and do anything with this culture. It was there, and so we know as we get a younger population of a workforce, we have to mold ourselves to that and the change that they bring to a company. So I think that's a lot of what is going to be our focus, is modifying and changing the culture to match what we need for the company in the future. But very, very pleased with the culture we have, and a lot of good people in the organization, leadership-wise, that will continue the work of the culture.
Yeah, I think that's important. Adaptability, right, is important when it comes to leadership, but also staying true to our roots, right? That culture, I think it's in roots. So what are some things you really work hard to do to make sure you stay true to the roots of the culture that's here, while also adapting with the needs that maybe external forces create, or even growth? Or, you know, sometimes as the CEO, we get measured by the bottom line, the results, so it can be very easy to focus on the balance sheet versus the culture. And how do you go about balancing those things? Need external forces, but staying true to your roots, or balance sheet versus people?
Yeah, like I said, it is a balance, to your point. But it's having the right balance, because there are times when we really are focused on our margins. And if we want to grow, we've got to have strong margins, and we are going to grow, so we need strong margins. But how we get those strong margins is by a strong culture, and then other components with that. You ask how? It's daily. It's taking steps daily in our little things, in our meetings that we have, the leadership meetings, the executive team meetings. It's a moment of emphasis in each of those meetings and on every agenda to talk about our culture one way or another, and sustaining and maintaining that culture, and how we don't compromise that culture. And it's daily. I mean, it's daily in little parts. You saw, you helped us today in this setting with leadership development with our leaders continue the culture by doing a lot of little things that you already know about the company, and so you are laying the seeds in the meeting here to help us, and we will do that with other engagements that we have and partners that we have in the future.
Yeah. So one of the values for Pete's Plus is excellence. What does excellence mean to you? And then how are you calling leaders up to that? Because again, we can sometimes think we're doing excellent work, but there's always that next level. So how do you challenge your leaders and your team? When the culture's been here for 20 years before you got here, you didn't have to create a new culture, but it was a value. What do you do? How do you go about challenging people to that next level of excellence or performance that we're after?
That's a great point. Excellence, to what you mentioned, is one of our core values. And excellence to me, how I define it today, would be different than a number of years ago, say 20 or 25. It's not being perfect. It's not stressing to our leaders they have to be a perfect leader, because there is no such thing. Back in a long time ago, my definition would have been something different. Today, it's when you fail, get back up. Learn from that failure and get back up and keep moving forward. And I think that's the one thing that you learn from experience. And so not being a very smart leader, but I can tell you I've got experience, and that's what I tell my team, is I do have experience, and I have failed a lot. And through those failures, hopefully I've become a better leader, and hopefully I'll become even better in the future because of what I've learned.
Yeah, that's good. So I love the idea of excellence. I love there's an old Chinese proverb, fall 7, get up 8, right? But a book that I often prescribe to people is James Clear's Atomic Habits. And in that he talks about the 1% rule, that getting 1% better every day. And if we do that 365 days in a row, we have a 37% return on our ability. I only wish I practiced that in my life more frequently. There's days that I don't always practice that just getting 1% better every day. But when you talk about this, the consistency and sustainability, you mentioned sustaining culture is important. What are some little daily practices you challenge your leaders into to be able to practice that 1%, get better every day so that we can sustain the culture that we're after?
It's a lot of little things, as we mentioned a little while ago, and it's simple things. It's kind of that KISS method of just keeping things simple. And in healthcare in general, in the field we're in pediatric healthcare, but in acute healthcare or wherever, and really it's not just limited to healthcare, being visible. Leaders need to be visible. And it's taking the opportunity to go around and create an excellence platform by being approachable. And I know that sounds simple, and there's a ton of books that talk about, management by wandering around. In the old day, that's what they used to talk a lot about. But I think it's true. Yeah. I think it's being able to be approachable and personal. And I've learned as I've gotten older, it's about loving people. I know that sounds odd to say in today's environment, I guess, but I wouldn't have said that 25 years ago. And so the concept is different now in thinking through that, but it's about loving people and loving them to see them and help them grow into who they want to be as a person, but also professionally.
Yeah. Yeah, love is often something that we miss in leadership. I know Scott and I both grew up in a generation where you didn't get too close to your people. You weren't friends with your people. I was in the Army, Scott, you know that, and we had a term in the Army, don't fraternize, and that meant don't be friends with your people, right? And luckily I had some great leaders around me that challenged that, and it really is about being friends with people first, respecting them, loving them before we inspire them. And I know you and I've talked about this in the past, some of your past, there wasn't really a relationship between you and your leaders. What are some common practices, common things that you do, I know, to build relationships, be visible, and build those relationships of trust with people? Because I know you do a great job of that. You and I have often talked about that. You're way more relational than I am. But what are some simple things that you would say to our Lead Up listeners that, hey, apply these things and it helps to build trust over time?
I think just spending time with your people. I've got an executive team, and then from the executive team, other realms of leaders, from senior VPs to VPs, and it is just getting to know them. First 2 months I was a part of Pediatrics Plus, as I did in healthcare settings prior to Pediatrics Plus, is taking an opportunity to sit down for an hour or two and getting to know each individual. Whether it be in a home office or whether it be, for sure, those that report directly to you, but in a home office, and getting as far out as possible. It kind of depends on the number of employees you have, but get out as far as possible just to get to know people and find out about their goals and dreams and their family. And every day you can't walk by and talk to everybody about, well, how's your third son doing? And but it's about, on an occasion, do that to keep an interest there. But also I've found that something that is good about building trust, it's that the old saying of, what can I do for you? What can I do to help you and help you be successful? That seems to resonate a lot, and something I've seen work well. And I don't want to make it sound like it's a method, but it is a part of leadership. In coaching, you and I have talked many times. The coach that coaches everybody the same is not as successful as a coach that individualizes coaching. Because one kid doesn't hear something that another might in the tone or in how it's said, so you got to figure out how they hear you.
Yeah, we just talked about that today in the Peach Plus University, about the different learning styles that people have, the different coaching methods that we have to go through as a leader to make sure our message is being heard. And Scott, you and I have talked about this a lot in our Quit Losing Talent work that we do, and some of that we're doing at Peach Plus is about creating a place where people want to stay, right? And that begins with valuing them. The number one reason someone decides to stay with us is, do they feel valued by the organization, mainly their leader. And one of the ways that you can do that is just, as Scott said, keep it simple. Just a rounding, and I'm not a fan of just the term rounding, because in some places it became a checkbox where, I checked in, he said he was fine. But we teach something called C-squared rounding, which is a connecting conversation, which is what Scott's talking about, connecting to that person's heart, to their interests, to their goals, to their dreams. And when they feel that we care about that, and again, it's not a manipulation, it's a connecting tip that Scott's given us. Does that very well. I've watched Scott do that for now 17 plus years as well. So let's talk about, how do you push leaders? Because what you're talking about, Scott, is very natural to you. In my work with thousands of leaders, not natural. They're more task-oriented than people-oriented. What do you do to coach people out of their office to get them to practice connecting conversations with others?
I think just speaking from experience to them about the value of engaging, interacting, and in some cases how to go about reaching out. And I used to talk to my kids all the time about the value of networking. And so it's either internal or external networking. And what we're talking about is internal networking within the company. And the value that people see in that, because that's who we are as a company today, and that's what I've been a part of for the most part in the past, is an opportunity to share not only the core values of a company, but also surround yourself with people that are similar in those values and share that and want to express that to others. You know, one thing I thought of, Mike, when you were talking just a minute ago, I was asked about over 35 years, what were some of the best attributes of some teams I had, and I would say a couple of teams that I had in my career that I saw as being very, very positive and very close-knit group were those teams that they supported you when you weren't in the room. Mm-hmm. And that's where you build trust, is that you know that those that you are closest to have your back and are supporting you. Yeah. And that just really brings a team together in a huge way.
Yeah, that reminded me of something I often teach. Leadership's not what happens when you're present, it's what happens when you're gone. Meaning, I'm at a meeting, does my team continue to perform at a high level, or do they only perform when I'm there? Right. And we've all had the micromanager that comes in and kind of towers over us and micromanages everything we do. I can perform good while that person's there, but when they leave, I'm like, man, I'm glad they're gone, and then I don't want to really perform, right? So building that trust, that relationship, really is about influence when you're not in the room, right? You talked about leadership as influence. If we have real relationship, real trust, a real team camaraderie, then I'm influencing them when I'm not even present. Mm-hmm. And that's the ultimate test of leadership. Let's talk a little bit about Pete's Plus University and the goal behind it. What are you really hoping your leaders learn? What's the ultimate kind of 3-year, 5-year vision for that, and why is that so important for your company's growth?
You know, I think it's taking the mission and the core values and who we are as a company to more children beyond where we are today. So we have 18 sites in Arkansas and in Texas. Mm-hmm. And so our companies and sites run from Rogers all the way to Frisco, Texas, and through Little Rock, Pulaski County. We have a number of sites, but 18 total, 9 preschools, and we have 4 really divisions within our company. We have the therapy, that's PT, OT, speech. We have developmental preschools that I mentioned just a minute ago, mm-hmm. and those are our largest sites that we have, and the largest one we have is here in Conway. Then we have autism services. Mm-hmm. That's really where our growth will be in the next 3 to 5 years. And then we have a behavioral health company called Rise. So we have 4 components, and each are growing, and we want to take out beyond where we are today. We are planning to grow into Oklahoma and into Missouri, and the fastest area of our company that's growing right now is the ABA world, is the autistic services that we offer. And so we've just opened up 2 farms, which is really a cool environment, and I need to take you to it if you haven't seen one. We have Bryant and Conway open today. We have Cabot and Little Flock that are under construction right now, Little Flock being Bentonville. And then we are currently underway with buying 2 other pieces of property in the state to put a farm on. And so that'll bring us up to 4 next year and 6 the next. And we plan to take the farm concept into Oklahoma and Missouri.
And the farm concept is, what are you doing there? You have livestock and animals?
It literally is a farmhouse. And if I had it on a slide here behind me, you would say, yep, that's a farmhouse, 10,000 square feet. What's done in the ABA world today is mostly in strip malls and in clinic settings, and we're taking it a huge step forward in bringing autistic services on a farm. So you've got a farm, looks like a farm, it is a farmhouse. It's about a 10,000 square foot farmhouse, but it has animals, and we have gardens, and then we have things for the children and the clients to actually step out and receive therapy while they're taking care of a farm. And so very unique, because most of our kids have not grown up on farms, but yet to be able to expose our clients to the activities that go on a farm and they're doing therapy when they don't know it. And so, and then inside they're able to bake and cook things. That's really kind of, it's just a fascinating concept. I give credit to our owners, and we're excited to take it to more.
Yeah, I haven't visited one of your farms yet. I need to do that. Sounds like a lot of fun. So let's come back to Pete's Plus. How does Pete's Plus University help you accomplish that vision, that 3 to 5 year vision that you have? What are you teaching? What are you developing in those leaders to help you be successful?
Well, you could answer that better than anybody right now. But when you and I sat down and started talking about the goal of Pediatrics Plus University and what it would bring to Pediatrics Plus, with our growth, we need more leaders, but we also want to make sure we strengthen the leaders we have. We've got some really, really good leaders in our organization, and when I say number, we've got about 1,200 employees or team members. You're seeing about 30 to 35 of those leaders in the courses that we're having now that you're helping lead. And so it's taking right now the leaders that we have, strengthening them in all kinds of ways, but also creating a platform that as we bring new leaders in and place them in other areas in Arkansas, other areas in Oklahoma and Missouri in the future, they're going through our university, so to speak, of leadership training. And it will strengthen us as a company.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to go back, because I think one of the things I really respect and appreciate about Scott is he understands the need to develop people. I remember, I'm a fan of John Maxwell. John Maxwell's been a mentor of mine, Scott, you know that, and a story he wrote about in his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He talked about, originally John was a preacher, and he took over a church in San Diego, and they would bounce from 1,000 to 2,000 people, and they could never sustain the growth over 1,000 people. And so they brought John in thinking they need a new preacher, and one of the first things John did there is he quit trying to grow externally, like membership, and he said the first thing we need to do is we need to grow our leaders. If we want to grow, if we want to get to that next level of membership or revenue, then we need to grow our people internally. Scott really understands that and appreciates that. But Scott, what I want to ask you in that is how do you balance the need to grow your leaders inside while we also have to grow on the outside? How do you balance those two and continue to really challenge your leaders? Because we're really asking them to do more, right? I mean, hey, we need you to do your full-time job, but we need you to also get better as a leader as well.
Well, that's part of what I really value about the past or within Pediatrics Plus, about the importance that our owners of the past have put into, the emphasis put into supporting those that want to have a family, but also be a part of Pediatrics Plus. And I think there is a balance, and we want to maintain that. But as you know, leadership does require time. And so it's strengthening those that they can maximize that time they're with us, but also still have a family and still have an outside life. So there lies the challenge. We're very hands-on. We're not a company that can, hire leaders and say, okay, well, you're remote. You get to be remote. There are some remote aspects of our company, but vast majority it's hands-on because of the therapy and the hands-on care we provide. And to me, I may be a little bit old-fashioned in saying this, but to me, leadership is very much hands-on. It's about being face-to-face, and it's about being there. It's about being present.
Yeah, and that's critical. Teaching and learning those skills at times, teaching leaders how to have those face-to-face conversations that they need to have to develop people is important. And a lot of what we're doing at Pete's Plus University, in Pete's Plus University, is teaching those skills. What often people say are soft skills. I'm not a fan of the term soft skills, Scott. I think they're really essential. The skills that we're asked to develop in leadership are essential for success for all leaders and for the company as well. What would you like to say to your leaders on this podcast, those that you have that are in Pete's Plus University and the ones that may join Pete's Plus University in the future that aren't even a part of the company yet?
Well, first, I would say hands down how much I appreciate and value the leaders we have today. I was fortunate to join a vast majority that are here today that were here 2.5 years ago and have been a part of the company, some as long as 15, 18, a handful 20 years. And so that's phenomenal when you have that institutional knowledge and investment from people. But we have added a number of new, and so it's that mix, and I think it really does help with moving a company forward and in growing a company is to have a good healthy mix. And so I would just say I value the leaders we have today. I hope they know that, and a lot of small things that are done, and some of those things they don't know is done, but behind the scenes, I hope they feel valued and appreciated. For new leaders, from a recruitment standpoint, PEDS is in a growth mode and will continue to be, and so we are looking for leaders that want to be a part of a pediatric therapy company. In fact, the largest pediatric therapy company in Arkansas and soon in the region, and we need good, strong leaders to take us into the future.
Yeah. So, what's one thing you think PEDS Plus does that attracts great leaders that you say, hey, this is the place for you if you want to be a part of something that is growing and going to be the largest pediatrics care organization in this region? What's that one thing you think that would make somebody want to come to PEDS Plus?
I think if there's any interest in pediatrics at all, we're worth looking into, 110%. Because just if you just take our mission, empowering children to conquer their world, it's not empowering children to conquer the world. It's empowering children to conquer their world. And it's very specific, and I think there's a big difference in that. And so, making a difference, this is a platform you can make a difference in a child's life in a huge way, whether it's directly hands-on, semi, in a mid-management role, having some contact, but yet overseeing individuals, or as a leader where you're not having that hands-on care, but you're bringing in, helping recruit and overseeing those that are. There's influence at all levels. And so I just think that's huge going forward for us.
Yeah, so the mission is empowering children to conquer their world. What I'm a believer in is that you can't give what you don't have. It's an old saying, old quote that someone once said. And so in order to empower children, empowering children to conquer their world, we've got to empower leaders to conquer their world as well, right? And that's what PEDS Plus really lives that mission out. They work every day to develop their leaders, develop their employees, create an environment where they want to stay, number one, but also create an environment where they can grow. It is a growth organization, and I know that, Scott, around the world right now, not every organization can say that. They want to grow the bottom line, but growing the bottom line requires that we grow people. PEDS Plus does that well. And so I just want to congratulate you guys for that. Just a couple of more questions. Just from a personal level, Scott, I want to go back to, I know you were in the hospital business during COVID, very challenging time to lead. And we can talk about that or talk about any other challenges you've had in leadership, but how have those hard times in leadership, like those maybe crisis moments, we all thought we were in a crisis moment of leadership, how did they reshape or shape your leadership for today?
I think just quick answer to a very complex question would be strengthening resilience, strengthening oneself to understand that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter what you're going through. And that was a dark time for the country, and healthcare. There was just a lot of issues that a lot of great people struggled, but also dealt with, and got us through that. Personally, losing friends was a sad time, and also watching a lot of leaders say, okay, I'm out. I'm going to go do something else. Totally understand that, because it was a tough time. But I think just leadership in general has hard times, whether it be a worldwide pandemic or other crisis that you have, they're always going to be there. Mm-hmm. They're always going to occur. And for me, I wish I'd have learned earlier in my career to have a little thicker skin, because you're never going to make everybody happy. Mm-hmm. In fact, I've told you, Mike, I'm very familiar with an author that I've mentioned to you, but did a survey a number of years ago to 100-year-olds. And the number one response of those 100-year-old individuals, both male and female, to the question of what would you do different in your life if you could go back and change something. And the word they summed up for the number one response was be more bold. And that's probably one thing I often think about is, being bolder as I get older. It is a little easier because we lose that filter a little more as we get older. Yeah. But if I could have done that earlier in my career, I might have a few more, linings in my stomach instead of less.
Yeah, you reminded me also of, I don't know who said it, but they said if you want to make everybody happy, sell ice cream.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right, and that's the hard thing about leadership is we do want everybody to be happy, but it's not possible in leadership, right? And so we don't want to go around with this attitude like we don't care about what other people think. But there is a time where we do have to be bold and say, okay, I've done what I can to collaborate with everyone. I've done what I can to try to please everyone, but now we've got to make a leadership decision to move forward. And I'm going to probably upset some people here. How did you personally learn to make that transition from I can't please everybody, so I got to collaborate, I got to bring others into the conversation, but we also have to be bold and start making forward progress?
I think the quick answer to that was when I learned that I was going to make a mistake sometimes in making that decision. Yeah. You always want to make the right decision, but that's not always going to happen. Mm-hmm. You want to make more right decisions than bad decisions, but you're going to make a wrong call here and there as a leader. Mm-hmm. And even in making the right call, you're not going to make everybody happy. And in making the wrong call, you're sure not going to make everybody happy. But again, leadership's about correcting, adjusting, getting back up. You kind of get punched in the mouth, as we've said many a time, but be tough enough to take it, get back up, and keep moving forward, and learn from what mistake you made.
Yeah, learn. Maybe apologize if we have to.
Exactly.
But don't let it stop you from moving forward. Okay, last question, Scott. This is always fun. This is the first time we've really had this kind of conversation. We talk a lot about leadership, challenge each other to grow. I love the opportunity to share with our Lead Up audience and continue to grow. Best leadership book you've read, and then what book are you reading right now that's making a difference in your life?
I just, the first one that came to mind, I'm learning to read more, Mike, as you know, and you give me a lot of good books.
Yeah, you can start reading them, by the way.
I hadn't made through half of them yet, but I would say one that comes to mind that just resonated at a time in my life a few years ago was John Gordon's book, Energy Bus. Mm-hmm. Because as you get a little older, you seem to be the older in the room, and you've got maybe a little wisdom about you, but you've sure got a lot of experience about you. And that's what I can say. I've got a lot of experience. But sometimes you lack in that energy. Mm-hmm. And so I really try to stay energized and continue the things like first to show up and last to leave. And that takes energy. Mm-hmm. And as old-fashioned as that may sound, I think that's also a part of leadership. But I would say John Gordon's book, Energy Bus, and it's about having energy. And it's about making the decision when you get up. You're not going to feel good every day, but you still got to flip that switch and have a tone about you and a cadence about you that's a positive one, and that people feed off that. Yeah. So,
yeah, I love that. Love John Gordon's work. Love Energy Bus, because energy is contagious, right? Mm-hmm. If it's bad energy, guess what? The people following you are gonna probably have low energy as well. Right. If we want more, like just an easy way. I have leaders all the time, Scott, ask me, how do I motivate my people? first thing I ask, well, are you motivated?
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're not motivated, that's kind of what John Gordon is teaching. If you're not motivated, there's no way you're going to motivate someone else.
Right.
So I love that. Book you're reading right now, it's making a difference in your life.
You know, the book I'm reading right now was written by, and I'll put a plug in for him. He was one of my roommates at college at Ouachita. Steve Snyder is the author of it, and Steve put together. It's more of a devotional, but it's authentic manhood.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've got a copy for you. You give me 5 books, I'll give you 1.
Like
That's kind of swap. But it's a book about just authentic manhood. And here recently, I've had the opportunity to preach a men's group at our church every week, and it's along the same lines of authentic manhood. And I would highly recommend that. And I'm reading it right now, and it helps you realize that we live in a world that sometimes manhood, leadership is defined one way, and yet from a biblical standpoint, it's defined a whole different way.
Yeah, I love that. I said one more question. I've got one more now because you brought it up. What role does faith play in your leadership?
It, as a person that fails every day, as a leader that fails a lot, and as a person that fails every day, faith is the core of who I am, but it is extremely important, has always been. It's extremely important to our family, and it continues. In fact, it just grows to be more and more important, and sometimes that comes with experience and age. But it's I could get emotional pretty quick, but it's very important. But with an emphasis of I fail every day. We all fail every day, and so the expectation of being a believer and being perfect is never a thought, because there's non-existent. There's only one perfect person, and so. Good question.
Yeah, I think it's good. Look, we could spend a whole podcast talking about faith, right? But I that's something we also have in common. We don't talk a lot about, but you mentioned love earlier. I think it's hard to really love people if you don't have kind of a foundation of faith in a higher power, number one, but faith in self, 2, and then 3, faith in others, right? I mean, to love people, I think it's got to be rooted in a faith foundation. And so I know you have that, and I know to be an elite leader, which I talk about a lot, I think we have to have a foundation of faith, which is just a belief, right, in something better, whether that's in ourselves. And Lord knows I need that because I too fail every single day, and I need that grace as well. And that's one thing faith gives us, is the grace to continue to move on. Lead Up listeners, it's been great to do this with you, Scott.
Thank you.
It's been the first time we've had a conversation like this. First interview of 2025, and so this is going to be fun. And I want to just challenge the Lead Up listeners to learn from some of the things that Scott shared with us today. Look up Pete's Plus on the internet. It's a great company, great values, great culture. And if you're looking for ways to implement culture and values-based leadership, maybe Scott's somebody to reach out to and talk to a little bit more to learn how to do that. This has been Mike Harbour, guest Scott Street on the Lead Up Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.